What's the Delia? The Delia is back for another day reading through the Gospels for our 30-day Gospel reading challenge, where we sit down together for 30 days and read through all 4 books of the Gospel, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And today we're reading through Matthew chapters 13, 14, 15, and 16. So let's dive right in because we have a lot to go over. Chapter 13 starts out with a ton of parables. We have like 5 parables, I think it is. Yeah, 5 parables. So the first parable that Jesus is telling to a group of people, this group typically includes like a whole mix of the leading priests, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, just like everyday people in the towns, and then his disciples who he's teaching. And he's telling this story of the farmer scattering seed. A farmer will scatter seed into the land, and the seed can land on 4 different places: a footpath, a rocky path, a thorny path, or on good soil. Footpath can be, as it's later explained, as if it lands somewhere and it never grows. It's just taken by birds and went off and the seed's gone. The rocky path can be like if the seed is planted and the roots start to grow, but they don't grow deep enough, so like the sun comes in and it burns up the plant because it just has no depth to it. Thorny soil can be like if the roots start to grow, but it gets choked out because there's other weeds and thorns that are overtaking. And then good soil is exactly what it sounds like. It's soil that is fertile, good, soft, and the roots can grow deep and the plant can grow to produce 30, 60, 100 times its bountiful. Now, this parable, being the first one, is kind of an explanation of how like people absorb the word, and the farmer is supposed to be Jesus, and like the people of the kingdom going out and planting the seed, which is the word, into the soil, which is the world. And after he gives this parable, his disciples go to him in private and they're like, "Why do you always tell us stuff in parables?" And Jesus tells them, well, it's not so that it can be easily understood. The best way to explain it can be so the truth, the word and the truth of the word goes on to people, and it can either harden somebody's heart or soften them to know the truth. He's saying to them, you are able to understand because you have a soft heart. I'm explaining it to people in a story because people who already are rejecting me, I don't want them to continue to reject me, if that makes sense. It's kind of an act of mercy and like grace to talk to people where they're at, because if somebody heard this story about planting seeds, they're just going to think, okay, that's a story about planting seeds. But when you actually have a heart and that can understand, and ears that can hear, and eyes that can see, you feel it transforming you. But if he just went out, was very direct, people like the Pharisees who already didn't like him would just continue to harden themselves against him regardless. So it's a great way for him to show mercy in his teaching. It's also kind of an encouragement for his disciples to know that it's not really our job to control the harvest. Like that's God's job, just to plant the seed and then God's gonna make it grow. So don't like try and overwhelm yourself with what happens after you plant the seed, or, you know, not noticing if somebody is growing or not. Like you plant the seed and then you move forward. The next 3 parables that we see, they talk about the concept of corruption within the kingdom of God's community. This is a parable of the wheat and the weeds, the mustard seed, and the yeast. So the wheat and the weeds is a farmer has a field and he plants wheat, and then the enemy comes in and plants weeds within the wheat. So when they grow together. And the farmer tells the workers, don't pull the weeds right now. We have to wait until the harvest so that we don't destroy the wheat in the process. This is again an encouragement to wait until Judgment Day when God comes down and he will separate the wheat from the weeds. We don't have to concern ourselves with trying to condemn or condone people in judgment because we are not perfect. Only Jesus is. The mustard seed, I always depicted to be something that was of a good connotation, but here we're seeing it again because of the context of where it's at. It's kind of showcasing a sense of corruption within the community of the kingdom of God, meaning that a mustard seed is the smallest seed above all seeds. In reality, it would grow to be like the size of a big bush. But here in the parable, it says it grows to be the size of a tree, and birds come and make nests in its branches. Because it's growing to be the size of a tree, it's growing beyond expectation. And where something grows to be too large in power and might, it allows a lot of room for evil and corruption to come in. And that's where we see with the birds. Because the birds in the earlier parable were depicted to be the enemy coming in and stealing the seed. Like birds kind of have this reference to the devil. When we have something so small growing to be so large, it allows a lot of room for the enemy to come in. And we see that again in the parable of the yeast. Like a woman is making bread and she puts a little bit of yeast in and she's making 3 measures inside of 3 measures of flour. That's like beyond expectation for the amount that a woman needed to bake. And then the yeast, in my translation, says that she put it in, but in other translations, it is said that she hid it inside of the leaven. Leaven or bread is also depicted to be like a sin or corruption. So we see here in those 3 that he's explaining what to be warned of within the kingdom. We have the parable of the hidden treasure and the pearl, and the parable of the fishing net. The hidden treasure and the pearl parable is so beautiful because it's talking about this man who discovers a hidden treasure inside of a field, and he gets so excited, he buries it, and then he sells everything that he has so that he can go and buy the whole field so that the treasure would be his. Same thing with the pearl. This man is out looking for beautiful pearls, beautiful gems, and when he finds one, he sells everything that he has so that he can buy that pearl, he can buy that gem. Here, the man is depicted as Jesus, who gave up everything that he has so that he can come and get the treasure, and the treasure is us. The treasure is the individual believer who enters into the kingdom of God. He wants us, so much so that he gave up everything for us by dying on the cross and resurrecting, but we'll get to that. The fishing net again tells us that the world will remain divided until the end of the time, that we are just to go fish for people, bring them in, plant the seeds, and then at the end of the time, God will sort between who is who. We don't have to worry ourselves with that. We wrap up chapter 13 with Jesus returning back to his hometown. This just tells us that in his hometown, he's rejected. So he goes to his hometown and people have no faith in him because they know where he comes from and they know his dad and they know his mom. Like, who is this guy? And so he doesn't really do a lot of miracles there because they just don't have any faith in him. So kind of like a sense of encouragement, because in a modern sense, it's usually like the people who are closest to you, who have known you your whole life and they know you to be a certain way. And when you branch out and start believing in something new and something different, it doesn't really sit right with them. And like we see time and time again, people don't want to believe in something that they are not comfortable with. People like to just stay the way that they are. There's really just 3 sections here in chapter 14. We start out talking about John the Baptist, who was put into prison because he called out Herod for marrying his brother's wife, and he was thrown into jail. Herod liked John because John would like talk to him and it would like stir him up inside, and he like respected him, and he also knew that people really liked him, so he didn't want to kill him. But unfortunately, his new wife had a daughter who went and did some belly dance for Herod, and he was so happy with the dance, he told her that he would give her anything that she wanted. And so her mom whispered in her ear and was like, I want John the Baptist's head on a platter, because she was offended at whatever John was saying to her. And so that's what Herod had to do, because he made that promise in front of everyone at a party. And they killed John the Baptist, which was really unfortunate because that's our guy. John the Baptist is my favorite. After that, Jesus is so greatly grieved by the loss of his friend, his cousin, obviously, that he tries to go be by himself and grieve in the wilderness alone. But there's so many people that follow him. The man really can't get no peace. There's 5,000 people that follow him to this location, and he heals them and he's teaching to them. And at one point, the disciples came up to him and said, it's getting late and we have no food. We don't know how to feed these people. And Jesus said, all right, what do we got? And we have 5 loaves. We got 2 fish. Sit down, bless it. And suddenly we have enough to feed 5,000 people with 12 baskets left over? Where did they put all the leftovers? First of all, that's what I want to know. After he does that really awesome miracle, we wrap up chapter 14 with him doing another really cool thing, which is sending everybody away, sending his disciples out onto the boat to go somewhere. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go pray. And as he's praying, it's like 3:00 in the morning. It says his disciples are on the water and they're in a storm. And so Jesus goes out to them by walking on the water. Like, what? He just goes and walks on the water to get to them. Like, just such a flex, okay? And our guy Peter, our favorite little silly disciple Peter, says, all right, Lord, if you really are who you say you are, tell me to go walk out on the water for you. I mean, it's a bold test of faith for himself, but Jesus said, all right, come on out. And he comes out and he starts walking until he takes his eyes off Jesus. Once he takes his eyes off Jesus and he's looking around and he's so scared at the waves and the wind, that's when he starts sinking and he has to call out to the Father to help him again. And Jesus helps him. And he puts him back in the boat and he reprimands him and says, why did you doubt me? Like, what is wrong with you? Not really. He didn't say that, but it's just always so comforting to know that the disciples had doubt. The disciples had fear and they had to continuously go back to Jesus. And Jesus always had his arms wide open, never really angry, just always there for us, ready to forgive us and be there for us as our Father and as our friend. He's the best. Okay, so we move into chapter 15 with Jesus and the Pharisees going head to head. This happens a lot, but basically the Pharisees are asking him, like, why is it that your disciples don't wash their hands before they eat? Pretty simple question, but Jesus knows the hearts of everybody, but especially of those Pharisees. And he knew that they were asking because they were trying to twist their traditions. Okay, this is what the Pharisees were known for doing. This is why Jesus came, to put them on blast in a sense, because they were always taking these customs and these traditions and they were putting them way far out of context. And Jesus said to them, why do you, by your traditions, violate the commandments of God? And he gives them an example. He says, you guys tell your mother and father that you can't give to them what is due for them to support them because you have to go give it to God. And in that exact breath, you are violating one of the 10 commandments of Moses, which is honor thy father and mother. He tells them, these people honor me with their lips, but with their hearts they are far from me. Their worship is farce, and they teach man-made ideas as commands from God. This was prophesied in Isaiah, and he's just calling them out. He's telling them what it is. Like, you guys just continuously, stick your nose down at things that are from God. God told you to do this, and you turn around and make it your own. Like, put your little twist on it. With the concept of inner purity, Jesus is teaching Peter that it's not really about what goes into your body that can defile you. Whenever I read that section and he says, it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you. You are defiled by the words that come out of your mouth. So I'm always like, oh, perfect. Now I can go eat McDonald's or whatever. Just so silly of me to think. But no, what he really means is, like, obviously your body is a temple, but it's your heart that you should be worried about. Like, what goes into your body will come out your butt, but what comes out of your heart is what can harm and hurt other people, because your tongue really is a weapon. Okay, so then this section's pretty cool. Jesus is talking to a Gentile woman. So we know that Jesus came to create a new kingdom and establish a new covenant between Jews and Gentiles. So, like, no longer are people segregated by their location, where they worship, the rules and religion, the customs of the days. He's coming to create a new united kingdom of anybody who believes in him. But at the time when he came for his ministry, he was specifically looking to reach the Jews first. The lost people of Israel, those were the people that were going to be the foundation of the church that would then, overtake the world. And so this woman is what's called a Gentile. She's not a Jewish person, whatever other way that she was. She comes up to Jesus and she's like, please heal my daughter. I need your help. And Jesus doesn't even look at her. He's like ghosting her real life. He's shunning her. His disciples were like, get away. And she says, please, please, please. And he says, I was sent to help God's lost sheep, the people of Israel. It's not right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs. And she responds with this banger of a line. She says, yeah, you're right, but even dogs can have scraps from the table. And Jesus was just like, that's the right answer. That's the right answer because it shows her humility, her understanding that she didn't deserve the grace that Jesus poured out. None of us do. That's why we have to have that spirit of, I do not deserve that. Like, no matter how good I want to think that I am a sinner. I am somebody who is filled with sin and evil and wickedness in my body from the day I was born, from the day I was conceived, okay? And yet Jesus, in his mercy, heals her daughter and heals us through the life, the death, and the resurrection of him on the cross. Praise be to God. Like, none of us deserve that. We wrap up chapter 15 with him continuing to heal many people and then doing what he did before, which was feed another 4,000 people. Never gonna be able to wrap my mind around how he did that. Like, you got 2 fish and a bunch of loaves of bread, and all of a sudden you've got 7 baskets in front of you. Like, It's absolutely phenomenal, which is why it's a miracle. So finally, we go into chapter 16, our last section together today. And Jesus is in another argument with the Pharisees, shocker. And this is what we talked about yesterday at the end of chapter 12 with the sign of Jonah. So the religious leaders keep hounding Jesus. They're like, show us a miracle, show us a miracle, do something cool, flex on us. And Jesus is like, sick of it. He says, the only thing I'm going to tell you is Jonah. Now, if you don't know who Jonah was a prophet in the Old Testament who went into the belly of a whale for 3 days because he did not obey God's rules. And after 3 days, he came out of the belly of the whale and, went on to do what he needed to do. I'm definitely misinterpreting a little bit of that, but trying to go a little bit faster. Basically, that's exactly foreshadowing what Jesus is about to do on the cross here shortly. The next section of this is kind of funny because it is really comforting to know that the disciples were always like in a rut. They can never really fully wrap their heads around the fact that they were hanging out with the literal Messiah, but they're on a boat and they're traveling and they realize, oh my gosh, we didn't bring any bread. I don't know where all the leftovers went from this 4,000, 5,000 people feast that Jesus had from like 2 loaves of bread or 2 fish and a bunch of loaves of bread. But they're like, oh my gosh, we forgot the bread. And Jesus says, watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now this we can see back from the parable from section 13. The yeast is so small amount, but it infiltrates everything inside the community, inside of the bread. And so what he's telling them is do not have a lack mindset. You're literally hanging out with the Messiah, the Son of God, and he just fed 4,000 people and 5,000 people with like 2 loaves of bread and some fish. And now you're worried about where the bread is and how you're gonna eat. Wake up, people. Like, why is it not clocking to you that Jesus can do all things? He literally just walked on water in front of you. Like, how wild. But they're human. The disciples are human, just like me, just like you. We all fall short to God's glory. And we all get like in our minds that if we can't see it, we can't believe it. But they have to believe. They have to be weary of the teachings of what other people are experiencing, and other people are so negative, and other people are doubting, and other people have fear. Just be with God. Just keep your eyes fixed on Jesus and he will provide for you. After that, as they're walking, Jesus is talking to Peter. Well, he's talking to his whole disciples, but he asks them, what's everyone saying about me? Who do people think I am? Like, what's the word on the street? Give me the tea. Peter says directly to Jesus, people think that you're Elijah. They think you're John the Baptist. They think you're some other prophet. And Jesus asks Peter, well, who do you think I am? No hesitation. Peter says, you are the Messiah. You are the Son of God. You are the Christ. And Jesus says, ding, ding, ding. You nailed it. Okay, you are now our chief disciple. Your name goes from being the silliest, goofiest. Peter's really embarrassing sometimes. Peter gives me secondhand embarrassment when I read about him. And yet I find myself feeling just like Peter. The faith is there, the 100% belief in who Jesus is, but then just always putting his foot in his mouth because that's Peter for you. We're all a little bit like Peter. Okay, perfect. I gotta wrap this up. That was my timer so that I don't go over time. So after that, he stops talking in so many stories, okay? Jesus is finally being 100% straight up with his disciples. And he's saying, okay, you just said I'm the Messiah. Now it's time for me to tell you what's gonna happen to the Messiah. The Messiah is going to suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders and the teachers and the religious law. He will be killed, but on the 3rd day, he will rise again from the dead. And Peter looks at him and he's like, no, come over here. You gotta stop. You gotta stop saying this stuff. That's not gonna happen to you. God forbid that happened to you. And Jesus says, get away from me, Satan. Your doubt, your fear, your lack mindset, that's not from Jesus. Jesus gives us a spirit we see in 1 Timothy of boldness, of truth, of courage, okay? We see in Joshua, be bold and courageous when you're in Christ. Do not fear, do not doubt, do not say, this is not gonna happen to you. If God says it's gonna happen to Jesus, it's gonna happen. And he foresees it, he foretells it, he tells them so that they know what he's saying is true, that he will die and he will be risen again on the 3rd day. And that will happen later on in our next section. For today, that's it. That's the Delia. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being with me.